Hey everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Mind Body Health Podcast. I'm looking forward to bringing you another episode that'll be filled with lots of tips and tools and strategies that help you to live your best life and to get to where you want to. And as I always stress, it's about living a high-performing life, which has a lot of ingredients. And the key is to get a foundation of having control of your mind, body, and health, because it has a catalytic impact on every other area of your life. Whatever you want in life, you can have. You hold the pen. You're writing the script every single day of your life, but it's up to you to take personal responsibility for that. Now, I'm delighted on this particular episode. I've got a very special guest. He's also an Irishman and also a Limerick native. We've known each other for a lot of decades at this stage. His name is Pat Slattery. He's an entrepreneur. He's a success coach, a business coach. He's run events all over the world. He's spoken all over the world. He shared the stage with giants such as Bob Proctor and Tracy and Victor Hansen and many other top experts and gurus from all over the world. He's passionate about making a difference in people's lives. And again, the ideal kind of guest for this, the essence and ethos of this podcast. So, and also he's in Spain now living the dream. So while I'm freezing it here in Baltic conditions in Limerick, Ireland at the moment, he's over there sunning it up. I think it was 22 degrees, he told me. He's finding it a bit chilly over there today. So Pat, welcome to the Mind Body Health Podcast.
Thanks, Dave. It was great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Much appreciated.
No problem. Great to have you on, because look, you always have a lot to share, and a lot of great information, and you have a lot of experience too, and experience counts for a lot. And you've ridden that roller coaster that life is. You've had lots of ups, you've had lots of downs, and like that, you've learned from the downs too. So we're touching a lot of different topics and areas in this podcast episode. But what's always good to start with is for listeners to get a kind of perspective and a bit more of an idea of who the guest is. So tell us, who's Pat Slattery, and kind of go back as far as you want and give people a bit of context of where you've come from and what you've done and so on.
Okay, well, how long did you say we have, David?
About 7 hours.
Yeah, we'll need 7 hours for that story. But yeah, well, look, I come from Limerick. I originally come from a place called Ballinanty in Limerick. So if anybody doesn't know where that is, if you know where Thomond Park is, right, that was my backyard. Yeah. That's where I grew up. I grew up in a 3-bedroom council house, which is fairly okay standard for most people, right? But I have 9 brothers and 6 sisters. So we left Ballinanty, I think, when I was about 10 years old, and we moved to Moyross because we got a 4-bedroom house. Now, when we moved to Moyross, we moved into an area, and I said it disrespectfully, by the way, because I'm very proud of where I came from and the people that got me to where I'm at. But the unfortunate thing about Moyross is there was quite a large environment there. We had about 6,500 people in that community with approximately 80% unemployment. So that meant there was little or no opportunities. Plus, there's a stigma. Society creates a stigma around people who come from areas like that too.
And mentality in the area too, Pat, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because, like you said, the unemployment, and there's always going to be a certain mentality in every environment anyway.
Absolutely. Well, you see, look, the reality is, guys, your environment will impact everything that you are, who you are, and the way you think. And if society creates an expectation of a particular environment, if you're in that environment long enough, you start to create the same expectation yourself. Or you create a belief, right? Or I often talk about these preconditions of programming that people have that are conditioned to believe to be true, because maybe you come from the wrong area, you come from the wrong side of town, you have no money, all this kind of stuff that happens. And when you grow up in a society like that, sometimes that's what happens too, right? So, but I always knew I would do something in life. I didn't know what. Right. So at 14 years of age, I left school. I got a job and I left school. And to be honest with you, I had it made. I just achieved what over 80% of the people in my community couldn't achieve.
Yeah.
So in my head, I was already successful. And, when I was in that job at 14, I mean, of course, it was started as a summer job, and I didn't want to go back to school. And trust me, they didn't want me to come back either. Right. So
bit of a scamp, yeah.
Well, I wasn't actually, Dave, but it's a bizarre story when you're taught by bad teachers and surrounded by bad, right? You just, and when you're a strong character and you defend yourself and stand up for yourself, sometimes society doesn't like that, and sometimes people that you're dealing with who have certain levels of power don't like people who can speak for themselves, right?
Great, that's such an important point, really. It's like that. Like, again, it's like I say, obviously, tongue-in-cheek joking in terms of the scam thing, but that makes a lot of sense, because it's like that the teachers will see they have a power. They're expecting all the kids to be a certain type of kid, certain type of personality, all troublemakers, and everyone's painted with the right brush. And like that, they're your authority figure in their head. They don't like anyone standing up to them and even telling them straight, and people not taking crap, basically. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it applies to life in general.
Yeah, I wasn't cheeky, Dave, right? I was just bored. And that's been quite honest with you. School bored me. Now,
yeah.
I got to be clear too on something, by the way, because we do hear a lot of speakers talk about your education and what they don't teach in school. And there's a certain element of me that agrees to that, but I also understand the importance of education. Now, I often say to people, remember something here. To me, if you come to me looking to work for me and you've just left the university and you have X amount of master's degrees, etc., in a certain area, and somebody else comes to me with 20 years experience, I mean this respectfully, I'm probably going to hire the guy with the experience.
Yeah.
Right? Because experience is something that will always be in demand. And education, so I would say to people whoever buy into this conditioning, of course, if you don't have an education, you can't achieve much and you can't build your own business, etc. Remember this, never, never, ever substitute your experience for education. In my opinion, there's no comparison.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, and when we look at this, but however, if you can get both, then I can tell you it will stand to you in so many ways, right? So don't be afraid of education, and certainly don't be afraid of experience. But how can you connect the two? And usually, of course, our education comes from our experience, right? People like me who left school very early. And it's over the time, the effort that we put in, the experience that we created is where we get our education. However, I will say to you, you can get there quicker, by the way. Don't do it the hard way. Don't do it the way we did originally. So I left school at 14, Dave, and got that job. And because of the old stigma that we talked about and where I came from and being so young, and I had a fear that I was going to lose this job. Now, remember, if my dad was alive today, Dave, by the way, he'd be 102 years old. So my dad broke his back when he was 42 years old. And we didn't get compensation. So, you know, well, we don't, maybe it was available back then, but if there was, we didn't know about it. I'm sure my dad, if he knew, he would have went for it, right? But so it wasn't. So we were raised on £71 a week. So when I got that job at 14, that meant I could bring some money home and make a difference in my family's life. And when I did, and I remember paying over half of my first paycheck to my mum, and my first week's wages, by the way, was £35 a week, right? It was 1984, so that's quite a while back, right? And so when I handed that over to my mum, I just knew, I saw something. That money was just making a difference in my family's life.
Yeah.
So I knew I have to make more money. That was my goal. And the only way I could make more money is by keeping this job. And of course, there was a fear about losing the job because there were things they didn't know about me. One, they didn't even know where I came from. They didn't know I was only 14. I didn't tell a lie, by the way. My dad met the head hall porter, and I had a few pints. And he said, I'll send you a young fella in tomorrow. I'll give him a job. So when I started working there, nobody even knew my name.
Yeah, I didn't ask any questions. Just send them in.
So just put you straight to work. So all these fears that would have been running, wondering around whether or not I'm going to keep this job, because I never wanted to lose the money, by the way. And the only way I could keep making that money is by keeping the job. So I made a very clear decision. I made a decision that when I walk in the front door of that hotel, the Cruises Hotel in Limerick, it's now a street, by the way, right? So when I walk in, my mindset was, when I walk in that door, I'm going to be the friendliest person that every single person in that hotel meets. I'm going to be the happiest person in that hotel. I am going to be the hardest worker. I'm going to show up on time. I'm going to look immaculate. I'm going to put my best self forward 100% of the time. I made a choice that I'm going to be the absolute best that I can be when I walk.
It's like being memorable, Pat. That's why I always say to people, be memorable in every interaction with any human or any group of people.
Oh, Dave, I can tell you something. So I'm 54, so that's 40 years ago. I promise you, there are people who met me 40 years ago in that hotel and they still remember me.
Yeah.
Right. And that was my goal, to make sure that everybody remembers me and everybody feels better when they walk away from meeting me than they did before they met me. Now, I also had to recognize something. And I often talk about it. I mentioned ironically, I mentioned it today to a group of people I'm mentoring, this very same story, as it turns out. And there was one guy, a guy called John Burns. He was in the job a couple of years ahead of me. And the guy was a great worker. He knew everything about the hotel. He knew everything, anything that needed to be done, you could ask him and he could do it straight away. So I could recognize that this guy could do a better job than me. And that's okay, because he could never be a better me. Right? Yeah. So I didn't get into that space where I see people right now trying to set up in business doing two different things. One, competing with other people.
Yeah.
And secondly, comparing themselves to other people.
Yeah.
And I never compared myself, nor did I ever compete. I just went in and gave the best that I could do, and that was good enough.
Quick question there, Pat, just on that, because it's such an important point for people to grasp. Was that just you being you, or had you started even reading, watching, listening to certain people? No, was that just like an instinct or what, in terms of not looking at comparing, not looking competitive? Like, it was very mature kind of attitude to have at that age.
Well, at the time, I guess I probably, to be fair, I probably wouldn't have recognized the inspiration that had been given from many different people in my life.
Yeah.
At the time, I would say to you, it was hunger. I was hungry. I wanted the money. I had to go. I mean, I didn't have a bad childhood. I can't say I had a terrible childhood, right? But we were poor. And I wanted more than that. And I wanted things that other people had that I couldn't have. So I was hungry, and that kind of got me thinking differently. However, I could go back and I could mention people who had a major impact in my life, actually. And one was an auntie of mine. She used to run the Shannon Jewelry Free Shop in Shannon Airport for 35 years. She was the first employee, actually, in a jewelry free shop in anywhere in the world, because Shannon was the first one, right? And she taught me how to read ever before you even start the school. She taught me how to tell the time. She taught me how to speak properly. And because she spoke very grand, and she spoke very nice and very polite. So she taught me things that my community didn't teach me. Not that my community taught me to be bad, by the way, they didn't. And even at 12 years old, I got involved with youth clubs. Matter of fact, even as teenagers in Moros, myself and a group of other teenagers set up summer camps and some youth clubs for kids younger than us to do something. And I found youth clubs certainly played a big part in my life in inspiring me and seeing what making a positive difference is to people. And my parents were exceptional. My mum sacrificed so much for us. It's when I really look back in life and I can say, my dad was my best friend growing up, but my mum was my greatest inspiration. Because she done everything, whatever had to be done. She was extremely resourceful. I'm grateful, by the way, she's still with us today. And but she was so resourceful. And I think without realizing it, when you see things like this every day, you learn to become resourceful also.
It's all impacting your subconscious, and you go back to the environment. If you take those key individuals, you were being influenced by them, whether you're realizing it or not.
100%. And then again, Dave, look, again, you tend to do things out of necessity, right? So, I mean, at 12 years old, my next door neighbor decided to become a bread man and asked me would I go working with him. And I was selling, at 12 years old, I was selling 400 sliced pans door to door, house to house every day. Right? So all of that was part of my education.
Yeah, that's going to say it was an early education.
Yeah. So, but it was by knocking on the doors. Now, it was a hell of a lot easier at 12 years of age to make a sale. Trust me, right?
Yeah.
But it was incredible, the things that we learn and the attitude we get. But I think something, Dave, that's very important, maybe to point out, because I have been through a hell of a lot of challenges. And before we get there, because I might forget to say this, and I really think this is important. And I went through hell in business, by the way. And I remember sharing with my peer group. I had a peer group in Limerick, and a few of the guys there would have been billionaires now. They were big property people. And we all get to share something personal, and we talk about the struggles in business. So it came to my week when we happened to be sharing this. And I'm sharing it, and these guys' jaws were literally hitting the table. And one of the guys came to me and said, Pat, he said, how the hell did you keep going? And the truth was, and this is my absolute honest answer, I didn't know I was failing. Nobody ever taught me about failure.
Yeah.
And this is part of the issue with education, right? It's based on the pass-fail system, right?
Yeah.
But nobody ever taught me about failure. See, I grew up, Dave, my whole life surviving.
Yeah, you saw it as just a journey.
Yeah, so it was just another day.
Yeah.
I
Great.
thought what I was going through, everybody goes through. I thought it was normal.
Because you didn't have that fear because it wasn't instilled in you.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I say this to people, no matter what, you got to keep going. Because had I been taught about failure, I know now, knowing what I know, chances are I would have stopped. I would have given up.
100%. Yeah.
But because I didn't know, I didn't recognize it, I kept going.
Mm.
Right? So remember something here. There's a great saying out there's Cantor's Law. Cantor's Law states that anything in the middle or anything if you stop doing what you're doing, you've just been interrupted in the middle.
Yeah.
So if you're being challenged and if you stop, then maybe if you give up, you've probably just stopped prematurely.
Yeah.
Right. So we got to find a way and we got to find the resources. And throughout my journey, Dave, as you know, because I took this attitude of being the best I can be. Well, at 15, I was a bouncer in nightclubs in Limerick. Right. I started working in the security industry. And from there, I became one of the largest security companies in the country in that area. I brought my business to the point where it would bring me over 25 million euro.
Mm.
From somebody who started out with nothing, I've had multiple companies. As you said, I'm over 30 years. I really got interested. I actually began the career in what I do now and what I've been doing for over 30 years actually stemmed from the security industry because I was fascinated by human behavior. I wanted to know, and I actually wrote a program many years ago, right? Which I got to travel the world and speak with chambers of commerce around the world, and it was called the Motivation for Crime. So I wanted to study different people, different areas. And let me go back to what we began this talk with about different environments and what is the actual motivation for crime. And by understanding that and getting fascinated by human behavior, I found myself being pulled more and more into personal development.
Mm.
And then as I was into personal development, I'm growing this business and then multiple other businesses that I was involved in, people come to me for support. And you mentioned earlier on, before we jumped on the call, we met in BNI, right?
Mm.
So I was brought into BNI, and I mentored BNI for 8 years. I went all over this country and started building chapters for BNI, not my business.
Yeah.
But because I didn't know how to fail, I kept going.
Yeah. But isn't that the key? Because like if you take even the way you fast track, even the security story alone, not to mind all the other successes you've had, once that fear of failure is taken away, that's how you're going to fast track things. Because there's literally nothing stopping in your mind. Whereas that's what's stopping people all the time.
Yeah. Now, again, don't get me wrong, in the early days, I had fear of other things, by the way. But giving up was never an option.
Mm.
That was never an option. Right? You know, I had that old, what they call the imposter syndrome and that other stuff that goes on, and these little gremlins that jump up and get in your ear and everything else. You know, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to be capable enough? You know, and I very quickly built a very large company. And then I was wondering, am I going to be good enough on my own? Until I realized I don't need to be. I need to find people who have more experience and maybe a little bit better educated than me and hire them too. Right? And we start building our team of people.
Yeah.
So we change everything. We look at all we got to do is figure out how can I. If you said to me, Dave, Pat, you can't do that, I'll thank you for that advice. And then I'll say to you, no, did you give me the best advice you've ever given me? Can you now tell me what I can do?
Yeah.
And when people tell me what I can't do, it goes in one ear and out the other. I don't store that information. I consciously get rid of it. Gone.
Yeah. It's like I can and I will, like living by that motto.
Absolutely. And I do.
That's great. And what are kind of like you said about you've had some tough times, of course. Like everyone has, anyone has had success, there's always been the tough times, but they've been the ones that have been the teachers. But just before we jump into those, which obviously are going to be valuable to share, or context of them, a couple of the other things that you've built, like even like the events and everything and stuff that you've done even more recently.
Yeah, I mean, look, I guess we were one of the first people to bring events to Ireland, right? I think you came along to our event in 2008, right? It was one of the
first time, yeah.
Right? And
that's why I'm here. It's just what got me online. It was like within 5 minutes of one of the speakers thought, okay, now I get the online thing.
Yeah, and at the time it was a whole new world, right?
Oh, big time.
So we brought 12 international speakers, some of the best internet marketers in the world, into Ireland in February 2008. And to be honest with you, Dave, part of that was, I had done, I qualified as a coach. I went back to school. I did go back to school. Let me clarify this, by the way. And I do have a law degree, right? And I do have a business degree. But if you ever ask me for them, you'll never become a client because you're asking the wrong questions.
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah.
But even I went back and I had done my coaching program, and I spent I think 7 or 9 months, I think, doing a coaching program. And when we finished up the coaching program, and at the time, it's a long time ago, people were getting excited and were saying, now you will be able to go out and charge the average around £35 an hour for coaching. And people were getting excited about it, and rightly so, because the average wage at the time was probably about £8 an hour. And I said, I won't be doing that. And they said, why not? Why did you do it? I said, I'm already making a hell of a lot more than that every hour in my security business. Why would I do something that's going to make me less? And then they said, well, why did you do it? I said, I actually done this course for a completely different reason. However, I said, let me share with you what I'm going to do. And for people who are listening and paying attention to this, I made a decision, Dave, to disrupt the industry. And so what I decided to do is, rather than me going, I don't do one-on-one coaching. Well, I do, but it's not cheap, right? And I only work with a handful of people. So I made a decision that my coaching is going to be given one-to-many. And how that was going to happen is we're going to do a seminar. You were in the room that day, and it was about 450 people in that room.
Around that, yeah, exactly.
Right? So now I have 450 people in a room where I get to share my message to it, where they can make an informed decision and choose whether they want to become part of what I do or not. And either way, it's okay. But I have done one presentation to 450 people as opposed to having 450 meetings, right? So I disrupted the industry. And then I started bringing coaches. And then, as you know, we have Tracy here in Ireland. Now, all the guys you mentioned earlier, they come to Ireland to speak at my seminars, to speak on my stage.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that we have to go, I have to fly around the world to speak with them. They have come to speak with me. We've had Victor Hansen, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Bob Proctor have been here, I think, on 4 occasions. Brian has been here on 4 occasions. I've had Dr. John D. Martini, Sharon Lecter, right? On all these events. But what's even more valuable here, Dave, is these events are bringing so many people together. And even still, I see it online, Dave, by the way. I still see you on Facebook. I watch everything, by the way, just so you know, right? And I see the people who are still connecting, who are still supporting each other, who met all the way back at that seminar in 2008.
Exactly. You can see it 100%.
I see it because we're, the funny thing is, back in 2008, David, I had to convince most of the internet marketers to join Facebook. Right? Now we can't get them off it. But the reality is, when I look at this and all these events, this is about bringing a much bigger community. There's something bigger at stake here, right? There's something much bigger at work. It's beyond me, by the way. It's not about me. It's anything but. And people will do business together. They'll support each other. They'll find ways to become great strategic partners. And they're building very solid relationships. And that's what's happening. And, we don't have a specific name for that community. There's no organization behind this community. It's just a community of outstanding people who are there to support each other and egg each other on and help build each other up. And that's what these seminars do.
And a big part of it was like sowing the seed and just giving people the spark. But a big thing for people to take from it is, if you take like Ireland, it's a small country. It is quite small-minded in many ways. To have people like Bob Proctor, Victor Hansen, Tracy, even getting them to come over was incredible. But the reason it happened is your clear vision. Add that to the no fear of failure, no limit to what you thought was possible. You didn't think it was crazy to have some people like that to come to Ireland, whereas most people before did. That's why they didn't do it before. And that's why you were able to disrupt it. But it was the vision and lack of fear of failure.
The truth is, Dave, there are a lot of people actually who want this. And I've yet to meet anybody who doesn't want more, right? Whatever more means to you, whether it's more happiness, more life, more money, more time, more health. I've yet to meet anybody who doesn't want more. You see, the biggest issue is this little gremlin that sits on their shoulder and gets them worried about, going back to, remember they talked about that comparison or judgment, right?
Yeah.
And it's, what will other people think? You see, and most people want it, but they will say it can't be done. And if you hear that often enough, and your environment starts to impact how you think, and then you become conditioned to believe that that's your truth and that's as far as you'll ever go. So therefore, it becomes a belief. So when we talk about these limiting beliefs, by the way, I've never met a newborn baby with a limiting belief.
Exactly, yeah. Conditions.
Those conditions, so it's instilled on you. So if anybody ever asks themselves a question, if anyone who's listening here ever asks themselves a question that creates any kind of doubt, ask yourself, where did you download that bullshit story from?
Yeah.
Because it's not yours. It's never yours. Somebody shared it with you. You can't imagine. You didn't imagine it up, by the way. Somebody has educated you or taught you in a sublime way, an intentional way, an unintentional way. Doesn't matter. You've downloaded that information from somewhere and you've held on to it and you've created a truth behind that, which absolutely it is not. Because if you were to look at all these programming, people would say to you, okay, I often ask people in my seminars, what are these? I'm too young, too old. I have no money, come from the wrong side of town. I have no education. Right? And people would tell me that these are excuses. But the truth is, they're not excuses. These are conditions. These are conditions that people from within those fit into that remit have been programmed to believe to be the truth. So therefore, you're too young to start the business. You have no money, you can't start the business. You have no education, you can't get a job. You come from the wrong side of town, nobody will buy into you. I could have justified all of those conditions if I allowed myself to be programmed to let them become my truth. And thankfully, I didn't do that. So why I'm saying this is because whoever's listening here, I'm sitting here in front of you as living proof that you don't have to buy into these conditions. Have I had tough times? Of course I have. And let me tell you something too. There are plenty of people who will remind you of that too.
Definitely.
If you let them.
Yeah.
But I will promise you this. I promise you this. You might feel that most of the people in your environment will knock you down and pull you back. And they probably will. But somewhere deep inside, they want what you have.
Exactly. That's why they're putting you down.
Yeah. And they're not always doing it intentionally. But it's important too to remember, it's not your job to fix them. So if you want to, what really changed my life, Dave, is a book called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. And people can download it for free. There are hundreds of links. It's over 100 years old. Matter of fact, this book was pre-Think and Grow Rich. Okay? And actually, Bob Proctor, since we mentioned Bob Proctor, all of Bob Proctor's programs, his initial programs, were called The Science of Getting Rich. They were based on that book. And when I read that book, I got one message from that book. And by the way, you can download this on audio, you can download it for free, and you can download it in multiple languages. But when I got that book, I read one thing in the book, and the question stood out to me. And the question was, how do you help the poor? And I said, do you help the poor by donating and by feeding them? And the answer is yes. However, you still keep them poor. So if you really want to help the poor, choose to become rich and then teach them how to do the same.
Yeah.
I can tell you, over 30 years ago, I read that. And that's why I'm doing what I do. That's why I'm on here with you today, David. That's why I do. That one paragraph changed my life, changed what I do.
It's all perspective, like.
Absolutely. So my goal, and I would say to everybody listening here, what we need in this world right now, what the people that are most important to you in your life, what they need right now is role models. Be that, despite the circumstances, despite the challenges, despite what other people think. And how do you do that? Well, let me tell you this. Just first, imagine. Imagine that you are everything that is. Your thoughts, your life, your dreams come true. You are everything that you choose to be. And you are as unlimited, as endless as the universe is. And remember what I said was you choose to be. Because when it comes down to choice, you are everything that you choose to be. And honestly, allow yourself to imagine that for a moment. Your life being determined by choice, not by chance, by choice. And what if every choice that you made shaped your destiny? And I believe it does, by the way. I believe that your choices are what determine your outcomes. And you can absolutely choose to have everything and anything that you truly desire in life because you choose consequences and outcomes. Every choice you make, there's going to be a consequence. There's going to be an outcome. Every choice. There is nothing that you do that does not require a choice. So if you believe this to be true, if you really believe this to be true, would you choose more of the great stuff? The things that make you grow, that make you flourish, the things that allow you to live a more fulfilled life? And by the way, the choice isn't life-altering, by the way. Most likely, the choice that you make now isn't going to drastically change your life. So remember something, you can enter any decision with the confidence that you can revise your actions sometime later. You can take a different course of action. You can learn from your mistakes and you can keep going. So weigh up and balance your options, but whatever you do, act in it. And remember too, not making a decision. If you become indecisive, the great Jim Rohn would have said, indecision is the thief of opportunity. And I can tell you, Dave, I learned something many years ago too on my journey. Because in the early days, even when starting my business, I took another job in a factory. And I remember one particular man, Tommy, he was the oldest guy in the factory. He used to work in the factory and we became good friends. And I went into the locker room one Monday morning and we were getting into our overalls. And he said, are you listening to that, Pat? And I said, what? And everybody was just chatting. He said, listen to them. And I'm listening and I'm wondering what. He said, yeah, he said, listen to them, Pat. They're wishing their lives away.
Yeah.
So he said, listen, you hear him? It's Monday. Can't wait till Friday. Right? And then he said, somebody else is saying, fuck Friday. Holidays are in 2 weeks' time. Can't wait for the holidays.
Yeah.
You're wishing, he said, these people are wishing their life away and I'm wishing for more.
Yeah.
And you know what? When I hear people wish their lives away, it's usually because they're dissatisfied with something, or they're working too hard or something, or they can't express their feelings, or maybe they're just not letting themselves be happy. And I'd say this to you, what is your greatest regret so far? And everybody has a regret of some sort. But then the question is, what are you going to choose? What will you set out to do, to achieve or change before you die, by the way? Because that's inevitable for everyone.
It's one guarantee.
100%. So maybe people should think differently. And as this day begins right now, maybe people haven't taken time to consider their choices. Maybe even to know that they do have a choice. But I promise you, if you know this, that you can be intentional and deliberate about your choices, you will make progress. Because all progress, good or bad, by the way, is intentional and deliberate, based on the choices that you made or are about to make.
That's the key thing for you to, again, grasp is, again, it's a choice. It's like the whole thing of taking personal responsibility for your life. And, a lot of time with that, people go, oh, but there's so much you can't control. But at the same time, you control your reaction to what you don't control. So you're still in control. And it's like I said at the very start about holding the pen, writing the script of your life. This is like, in essence, what you're saying. You're actually in control of your choices. Even indecision is making a decision because you're choosing to not move. And you're usually doing it because you're afraid of the, inverted commas, risk. But it's a risk not surely staying where you are, because you're obviously unfulfilled if you're looking for more. And like you said earlier, everyone's looking for more. You always are. And as humans at a cellular level, you're growing or dying. So of course you're looking for more in every kind of aspect. So the risk is staying where you are, not moving forward. And again, if you move forward, if it's the wrong course, just go a different course.
Yeah. And look, the reality is if you don't choose it and you're indecisive and don't take action, then what outcome do you expect? What consequences do you expect? Yeah. Right? Isn't it funny that, the world all seems to belong to people who kind of reach out and grab you with both hands?
Yeah.
It seems to belong to those who do something rather than just wish and hope and plan and pray and intend to do something someday when everything is just right.
Yeah. Waiting for perfect.
Oh, yeah. When they see, people who, whatever success means to you, by the way. But successful people are not necessarily those who make the right decisions all the time either. No one can do that, no matter how smart they are. But once successful people have made a decision or made a choice, they begin to move towards their objectives. They do it step by step, and they begin to get feedback or signals to tell them if they're off course. And then when course corrections are necessary, and then they take action and move towards their goals. They make choices. They decide to do the thing that they have thought about. They continually get new information that enables them to adjust their plans in large and small ways. But they continuously make choices that serve them. And this is important that people need to understand. They continuously make choices that serve them. And it's also important to understand that life, by the way, is a series of approximations and course adjustments, right? So when an airplane leaves Sheahan Airport and heads for New York, you know that it's 99% of the time it's off course, right? And this is normal and it's natural to be expected. So the pilot makes continual course corrections, a little bit to the north, a little bit to the south. The pilot continually adjusts altitude and throttle. And sure enough, several hours later, the plane touches down at exactly the time predicted when it first became airborne upon leaving Sheahan. Because the whole journey, the entire journey has been a process of approximations and course adjustments. So what's the big problem about making great choices and acting on them?
Yeah.
Right? Maybe the big problem is that there's no guarantees in life.
Yeah. And that's what people are looking for and wanting. Whereas like any journey A to B, no matter what it is never a straight line. That's literally the fact.
And well, everything is filled with uncertainty. Right? You can never be completely sure that any action or any behavior is going to bring about the desired result. There's always a risk. And where the risk is, there's fear, unfortunately. But I can tell you this, whatever you think about grows in your mind and in your heart. People who continually think about the risks involved in undertaking anything soon become preoccupied with the fears and the doubts and the anxieties that conspire to hold them back from trying in the first place. They usually only make choices that do not serve them best. So people need to choose to launch. You need to launch. Make a decision. So you got to think, I think it was Babson College had done a 12-year study into the reasons for success. And researchers concluded that virtually all success was based on what they call the corridor principle. They likened achieving success to proceeding down a corridor in life. Each of us stands at the entrance of this corridor looking into the darkness, and we see the corridor disappear into the distance. And the researcher said that the difference between the successes and the failures in their studies could be summarized by the choice to launch. Successful people were willing to choose to launch themselves down the corridor of opportunity without any guarantee of what would occur. They were willing to choose to risk uncertainty and overcome the normal fears and doubts that hold the great majority of people in place. And the remarkable thing is that as soon as you choose to move down the corridor of life, new doors of opportunities open up on both sides of you.
Having that openness to see that and to do it. It's just stepping out of the fear. That's people's problem, just taking that first step. And I always say to people, it doesn't matter how big the step is, it doesn't matter how tiny it is, it's just taking it. And then consistently just keep stepping. And your life has to improve. It becomes inevitable.
Yeah. Well, people won't see the doors, right, if they don't choose to move down the corridor.
Yeah.
Right? These doors won't open. And if they're waiting for some assurance before stepping out and in faith and choosing to take action, it's not going to happen. I think there's Confucian that says the journey of 1,000 leagues begins with a single step.
Exactly.
Simply meaning that great accomplishment begins with your willingness to face the inevitable uncertainty of anything new, any new enterprise, and then step boldly in the direction of your goal. So I would suggest to people who are paying attention now, choose to step in the direction of your goal. You can put off making a decision for a long time, but where does that really get you? It's just a stall tactic that buys you very little, by the way, and it might cost you a lot.
Exactly, yeah.
They call it opportunity cost.
It's keeping you where you're unfulfilled, which is why you're looking in the first place anyway. But like I said, you're losing time, you're losing opportunities, you're losing everything. The opportunity cost, exactly.
Right. So what's the wiser approach then, right? Carefully review your options, single out the one that has the most positives going for it, and then act. It's much better than sitting by in the sidelines doing nothing. Right? And avoid trying to second guess yourself. Once you've actually reviewed the options you have, then choose to act upon one. Second guessing never produces results, but usually learning from your experiences do.
Yeah, exactly.
And then people say to me, what I've heard many times? Oh, what if it doesn't work? Well, the answer to that is simple. Do something else.
Exactly. Change course, change tactics, whatever. There's always a way. Go into solution mode, basically. There's always a way. Just keep moving forward. It's the bottom line.
No one's going to be successful in making the right choice every time. That's not how life works.
Yeah. It's impossible.
Yeah. That's not how life works.
Yeah.
But don't give up. Right?
Yeah. That's key. But that's a great, invaluable stuff there. And if we just flip it now the other way, so like there's a lot of success, loads of great tips about that, getting the mindset right. Another important part of getting the journey is the roller coaster ride where it goes on its dips and you go through the challenging times. And everyone's going to have that. Anyone who does take that step and does start down that corridor, you're going to have challenging times. It's inevitable. When you take what's perceived as a risk, that's all part of the journey, but they're learning opportunities. So for people, though, the issue, I suppose, is their mentality around when they're hit with these. Like, how would you advise people from your own experiences of tough times, how to develop that resilience, that mindset, actually, instead of letting it take them completely into darkness, instead keep moving towards a possible light they have to believe that will appear?
Well, let me say this to you. When, I had a great business partner and a great comrade who passed away a few years ago. I don't know if you remember Donny, Dave. Have you ever met Donny?
What was the surname?
Donny O'Callaghan.
Yeah, I think I met him before, yeah.
There's no question you would have met him at some of our events, even in Limerick with me on a few occasions.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I remember going through a very, very difficult challenge on one particular day. And I called him up, and he lives in Dublin. And I had to go to Dublin that same day, right? And I had probably one of the toughest days I've ever had in my business. And I called him up and I said, right, I'm a bit deflated. Gotta do this and I have to do that. And this is the situation right now. And he said, Pat, let me say something to you. What you're having right now is an experience. He said, and in most cases, most people, the most natural thing to do is to try and duck and dive, to get around it, to get over it, get under it. But you do anything to avoid it if it's an experience you don't like. But he said, the reality is what you're going through now is an experience. And the only way you can actually have that experience is to go through it. So go through it. And once you're going through it, we look at the resources that you have, the people that you surround yourself with, the right people. We reach out to them for support. We reach out for mentors. We reach out for guidance. You can reach out to your God, or if that means anything to you, or whoever it is. But you go through this experience is the only way you're going to get through it. And he said, the day will come. He said, that experience is like going down that dark tunnel. That someday you will look back, you come out the other side of that experience and you look back and you go, what the hell was that about anyway? He said, it won't have the impact that you think it will. And he was 100% right, Dave. And I will always say that to people. When you're going through tough times, you're just having an experience. Keep going. Keep going. And if you don't know what you're doing is working, keep doing it. Because if it's not working, you will know. You see, everybody's looking for the proof all the time. And we don't see the proof instantly. And they can't see it. Now, the only reason that you won't see the proof is if you allow yourself to get distracted and to get discouraged and look at all the things that might go wrong. You have to visualize the end and keep the end in mind at all times. And if you think why you're doing what you do, what are you hoping to get out of it? It's not money, by the way. Money is not the motivating factor here. It might be what money can do for you. It might be the lifestyle that you choose to live. The things that you desire most of, to spend more time with the people that are most important in your life. And if you keep an eye on that, you can predict your future. You can predict what it's going to be like. And then when you start making choices and making decisions and do the thing that you might have been scared of, the thing you're uncertain of, you go down that corridor. You take that first step. And sometimes, if you never lose sight of the goal, you might find a completely different route to get you there, but you will find it. I have ended up where I've ended up. I'm in the most happiest place in my life right now. I'm in such a wonderful place. I've never been so happy in my life. And the reality is, this is what I visualized. This is what I dreamt. I actually live. I predicted where I'm going to live. I'm living here now. I live 2-3 minutes walk from the most stunning beaches. And I go out there and I enjoy it. And I sit there and I reflect on life quite often. And then I reflect maturely, which means I reflect on what's coming. I predict what's coming. And then I get involved in doing what it takes to make that happen. And do I make the right decision all the time? No. But I'm getting better and better and better at it the more I do it. And sometimes, as I said, I've ended up here. It was a completely different route than I had thought would get me here. So sometimes we see what happens when people set a goal or a vision for their life, the thing that will make them happy. And life gets in the way, because life is a habit of getting in the way. And when life gets in the way, people usually give up on their goal. They give up on the dream and think it was crazy. It was too far out there. It was too much to be thinking about. What I'm going to suggest to you, if what you're doing is not working, never ever give up on the goal. You never change the goal, just change the plan. Just change it, do something else, and you'll get there.
Yeah. That's why the whole importance of just keep moving forward and not giving up and just keep stepping, because you will get there. No different, like you said, with the flight going from, say, Shannon to New York. It's not going exactly the exact plan that was laid out. It's constantly correcting, because you're learning along the way and dealing with whatever is coming at. Like they'll hit adverse weather conditions multiple times on a trip like that weren't necessarily expected or were predicted, but maybe not as bad or not as weak as they expected. They still have to course correct. And same with every journey in life, basically.
Absolutely. And that is exactly what life is like. And that's what business is like. Just be prepared to go through that experience when you're going through it.
Yeah, I love you calling it that. That was a great bit of advice you got. Like, to see it as experience. It's such a great perspective and mindset to have around a challenging time. Yeah. Because it will pass. It has to pass. You know what I mean? It won't pass if you literally sit there and do nothing. Like, once you again are dealing with it in some capacity, it has to pass.
Yeah. And look, and the most important thing too is you got to seek out those people who get it, the people that will give you support, the people that step up. Now, that doesn't mean that you give your problem to somebody else to solve for you, by the way. You just find the right people who believe in you, who give you that support. And this is what we talked about earlier with the seminars and the events. Like, what I love about it, like the day you were in that room, Dave, that first event, 450 people, I can guarantee you this, the type of people that were in that room, whatever it is that you decided you wanted for you that day, everyone in that room wanted it for you too.
Yeah. They're like-minded people and supportive people. It's a different mentality.
And there are plenty of them there.
Yeah.
Plenty of them there.
That's why it's key to surround yourself with people like that. If you want more, surround yourself with other people who want more.
Absolutely. And look, that's why whoever's listening to this podcast, whoever's here, that's why you're paying attention to this, because you know. And that's why, David, you're offering great support. That's what you're doing. You're part of that support process. You're part, you will get to influence people that you will never meet in your life. There are some people who will listen to this podcast or some other podcast, and as a result of the choices that you made, that's going to change somebody's life.
Yeah.
That you might never meet. Imagine that.
Isn't that the amazing power we all have? And that's what a lot of people don't seem to realize, that every single individual has the power to have a positive impact on other people. Every single person. You don't have to be an expert, guru, anything. Every person. Even just smiling at someone that you're passing can maybe lighten up their day, that extra 2-3% that changes the course of their day. Because they might be having a very dark day, and that little bit of acknowledgement can just put them off to do something more positive than they were going to possibly do. So we all have such a power in our hands to impact people.
Yeah. So remember something. Maybe it's just time to change the script, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be painful reliving past experiences to do so. So here's another little tip of maybe how you guys can turn your faulty stories into empowered ones. And the number one thing, as I say, is savor your success. When good things happen, try to stretch the feeling of happiness that arises before allowing thoughts that create fear to push them away. So first and foremost, allow the success or praise to land on you. Don't be quick to dismiss it by shrugging it off and attributing it to luck or passing it off to other people, right? And of course, for sure, other factors and people might have played a role as well, but it's important to acknowledge that. However, it's equally important to acknowledge your own role. So savor your contribution and think about how your success helps create a better future for you and anybody else around you. And even a few moments of uplifting reflection, allow some momentary positive feelings to sink into your long-term memory and then replace the negative beliefs and no longer serve you well. Allow those positive feelings to sink into your long-term memory. And if fearful thoughts arise, don't challenge them. Instead, just return to savoring your success so that eventually the positive replaces the negative. Then reflect on the process. Most often than not, people don't think about the strategies that made them successful. Now, you see, you might think, I'm not successful yet. Every single person in this world has produced a success of some sort. So most people don't think about the strategies that made them that success. They're either too busy or they're afraid that if they look back, they would discover something they overlooked and could have netted an even bigger win, right?
Yeah.
Or that would undercut their victory. And sometimes they even believe that they're saving themselves the bitter pain of remuneration, right? And sadly, this just leaves people with precious little knowledge of what they did well. Perhaps you reached out to the right people, structured your time well, or set the right priorities. Perhaps you used your strengths, were in your right mindset, maybe aligned the project with your long-term goals. But reflecting on the process gives you the tools to repeat, even outdo your performance and help you build a growth mindset. So, which occurs, by the way, when you believe that competence is like a plant that flourishes with the right nutrients.
Yeah.
So remember, it is just as important to reflect on the behaviors that weren't helpful or that made you feel guilty or resentful later. Otherwise, you are likely to repeat these same missteps as well. So you mentioned it earlier, Dave, stop searching for perfection, right? The secret to changing your inner beliefs is to engage in behavioral experiments that test your faulty assumptions, if you like. So if you believe that your project will fail unless you stay up until 2 o'clock in the morning, dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's, and that you'll be fired unless your work is 100% perfect, you might be in for a lifetime of anxiety and comparison. So you got to set a timer for when you need to call it a day and stopping at good enough. You might likely realize that actually nobody expected you to be perfect in the first place. Nobody expects you to be perfect. Good enough is good enough. And even if more was expected of you, by the way, your world won't fall apart. You'll still be loved and valued. You'll still be getting rid of your greatest fear. Now, this experiment, if you're going to do it, is easier said than done, of course, right? Until you created a bucket full of what I call self-worth. You need to get comfortable with discomfort. So you might get yourself into a space where I would say, look, Dave, I know you do a lot of work with people, and even get them into the place where they do some breath work, right? And allow themselves to be deliberate about what to do.
Yeah.
Right? But I will say to people, a word of caution, be wise when you need to experiment, when you decide. Doing so for a critical project or an important job interview might not be the best strategy. So start safe and small and grow from there. There's something magical that happens when you change your inner stories that usually rob you of the joy of success and of life itself. You'll gain time because you're no longer busy trying to prove yourself. You have time to spend on things that truly matter, time to spend on activities that bring you joy, and time to reflect on your place in this wonderful cycle of life.
And that's the key. It's again, like, it goes back to everyone looking at themselves and go, what is my own personal perception of success and what's my own personal perception of happiness? Not society's, not somebody else's, what's mine? And then work towards that each and every day. And again, no matter how big or tiny the steps are, just keep striding forward. That's the key.
And remember, success to me is who you become on the way to getting what you want.
Yeah, yeah. Keep evolving. Keep evolving to a better person basically every day.
Yeah.
That's why I stress out. I'm committed to evolving to better version of yourself till your last breath, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose, let me put it another way. No matter what the prize is, no matter how big the goal, reaching your goal only accounts for a small percentage of your total happiness, by the way.
Exactly.
When you win the prize, when you get the body that you dream about, or when you're standing on the podium and you're triumphant, that feeling cannot last. Right? At most, that feeling might last a couple of hours, a few days, or even a few weeks, but not forever. That feeling of success is only about 5% of your happiness, and ultimately, isn't that what everybody's in pursuit of, right? They even run a movie about it.
Yeah.
Well, success must be found every single day, each day, in the small accomplishments. You must find success in the little prizes of keeping your word and developing positive habits, of getting past your own self-imposed limiting beliefs and milestones. And I can promise you that feeling of success is 90 to 95% of your success. And I can tell you, once you understand this, you will have all the successes that you desire. You will have all the money. You will have everything that you want.
Just getting that mindset and working on it and getting those right people around you and taking action.
Yeah. So
awesome stuff, Pat. It's been amazing. Like, look, your journey itself is inspiring, but it's, again, as I said, it's a roller coaster journey that people have who are successful, and especially who get to the point of true happiness. And again, their own version. Like, you're living your version of happiness. That's going to be different to someone else, to someone else, to someone else. So it's key, again, working on your own version, not against societies or what other people around you tell you successful is or happy is or whatever. And, it's like you said, see things as experiences and just stride forward and go down that corridor and don't let anything stop you. So, Pat, tell us a bit more about where people can find out more about you, learn more about you. Tell us, I know you have some events coming up, so tell us about some of that stuff.
Well, we have an event coming up on the 2nd of February in Dublin, in the Hilton Hotel at Dublin Airport, and the great Ron White, the two-time American memory champion, is coming over again. This is about his 8th or 9th trip here, actually, with me. But he's such an entertaining speaker, but he gives so much value to people that can take away.
It's mind-blowing, the examples he does.
Mind-blowing, right? Pun intended.
Yeah.
But he's an extraordinary guy, and he will teach people how to use your memory to create value to your life and others, and of course help you make a hell of a lot more money, right? He's an extraordinary man. And then Heather Mortimer is coming over. She's a property specialist and property teacher, and teaching people how to invest in property with no money and so forth. So she's going to be doing a bit of talk. But outside of that, then we're going to have a complete evening of networking. We're going to get people. I'm going to facilitate a networking exercise. For people in the room, my goal is to find business for everybody in the room and get them introduced to people. And I'm going to show people how to network with purpose. I see people going to networking meetings, and they're coming back with no value. And I call that doing great cups of coffee. So, right? And they had a great cup of coffee, but they came away with no business, which is why they went there in the first place, right? Yeah. But at this one, it's going to be an evening of inspiration, maybe a bit of motivation, if that's what people need, but also connection. And we're going to connect people. We're going to connect more people with more like-minded people. And the likelihood is that they will do business possibly, but they'll certainly get support, and they'll find somebody in that room that could be part of their journey. And that's part of the goal on that evening. So that's on the 2nd. And then I leave on the 3rd to go to Budapest. I have 2 events in Budapest, and then on to Cyprus and back to Scotland. And then I come back to rest in Spain, because that's more than enough work I need to do for a year.
That's right? It, yeah. Back to recharge for the next bout of it.
Yeah. But if people want to reach out, if you Google Pat Slattery, you'll probably find me, right? But usually Facebook and LinkedIn are where I'm most active.
They're the 2 mediums you use mainly, isn't it? Facebook, LinkedIn.
So, I have quite a large network of people, David, as you know, right? So that's where most of my time is spent. But if anybody does want to reach out, they can drop me an email at patslattery.com. But if you do, I may send you a gift, but only if you put Dave Sheahan in the subject box, because I get a lot of emails. I don't open them all, let me tell you, right? But if I see Dave Sheahan in the subject box, I'll open the email, and I'd probably send you a little gift, maybe a couple of videos, things I've recorded, and might give you a bit of guidance to help you move forward. Or if you want to jump on a call and have a conversation, we may be able to do that. So just drop me an email at pat@patslattery.com. That's probably the best way. Now, don't be offended if I don't get back immediately. I don't check my emails every day. Okay. And I say this respectfully. When I work with people, I want them to do as I do. Okay. I love my life. I love spending time doing the things I love doing with the people that are most important in my life. That's my number one priority. So if I don't respond to an email instantly or immediately, don't be offended. I will get back to you within a day or so.
Yeah. It's having more life in one's life. And that's what too few people have, unfortunately. But again, it goes back to the choice and everyone having the power to change it if they're not happy with where they are. So guys, you've got a great offer there. So go make sure you get in touch, grab those free gifts. Check out Pat on LinkedIn and Facebook. If you're interested in the events, get in touch as well. Anyone want any more details can get in touch with me as well, and I can forward them on to you. You'll get to see a lot of the details anyway in the show notes. So just check them out there, and I'll put all the links to everything down there. So that's another episode wrapped up of the Mind Body Health podcast. I'm sure you got a lot of value from it. It's been some amazing tips, strategies, stories, tools. You've got a lot there. Remember, the key thing though is taking action. It's not knowledge that's power, it's the implementation of knowledge that's power. There's a lot of people who learn a lot, attend podcasts a lot, go to events a lot, do courses a lot, but they don't do anything with it. It's action that matters. And keep living off again like your experiences, like we've said a few times during it. So Pat, thank you so much for being on. I know your time is valuable, and it's been great reconnecting and having you on again.
Super. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
So enjoy the sun. And don't be worried about me freezing over here.
Absolutely, well, don't you worry.
All right, guys, take care. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Let us know in the comment section, and please share it out there with anyone you feel it will add value to. Talk to you on the next episode.